Hello EduFitters. Welcome to the training course, Competency Development for Employees of EduFit Corporation. In the first video about listening, we learned about the definition, role, and levels of listening. In part 2 we will continue learning how to be able to master the listening skill in communication. To begin, it is true that listening is one of the most difficult skills to master. In fact, humans normally spend only the first 3 years learning to speak, while learning to listen takes more than a lifetime. So, what prevents us from being able to listen fully and empathically? The first factor that hinders listening is judgment. Each individual is one of a kind. We are different in terms of backgrounds, job positions, knowledge, experience, and skills, etc., all of which form our own values and criteria. Therefore, during the process of listening, if we overemphasize our personal opinions and experiences, we are likely to end up judging the other person. All of these judgments will be small voices or echoes that run constantly in your head and distract you from fully listening. This is also the most common cause hindering our listening ability. The second obstacle is prejudice. Prejudice is your deep-rooted and persistent opinions, comments, and feelings about the other person. As a result, prejudice creates your default opinions before the conversation actually happens. For example,
John is always acting all high and mighty. I really get sick of that. Also, he always talks too much and too long.
Emily, I need a little bit of help.
What's he up to? I hope he doesn't make a long speech again.
So, when you keep your prejudice in communication, you will always have the tendency of not wanting to listen and will often wind up not really listening. The third factor that hinders the listening process is I know it already. This is a pretty common but mistaken thought that almost all of us have. Particularly, when the other person talks about a topic that you have already heard of or know about, then all of a sudden thoughts such as, I already know this, I have been trained on this, I have mastered this, will occupy your mind and make you refuse to listen to the information from the other person. Obviously, when you choose not to listen, you will be unable to fully grasp the contents and the whole message that the other person wants to convey. Thereby you will end up acquiring no new knowledge to improve and develop yourself. The universal tendency of human beings is always towards improving, updating and perfecting methods in the interest of better efficiency. So, even though you've already heard about, know about, or done things in the past, with the information acquired from new people, new situations, and new settings, you will likely be able to learn more new lessons. One of the skills that is equally important as the skill of learning new things is the skill of temporarily putting aside what you already know and considering yourself as a blank sheet of paper in order to fully listen. The fourth and final factor that hinders our listening is selfhood. Selfhood is intrinsically the positive image we perceive of ourselves in the eyes of those around us. That's why people always seek to keep selfhood as their second face. Therefore, no one wants to be humiliated or lose face in front of others. Consequently, a common psychological response when you hear another person saying something that affects or simply threatens to affect your selfhood is to instantly have negative emotions and stop wanting to listen, while simultaneously giving explanations and excuses to defend your selfhood. On the contrary, we are apt to feel like receiving and listening to compliments, encouragement, and acknowledgments because they help to improve our confidence and selfhood. Refusing to listen to constructive suggestions and evaluations will eventually turn us into conservatives or extremists who never realize our weaknesses and shortcomings to improve and develop ourselves. When we avoid looking bad, we end up missing the opportunity to embrace new and valuable things to help ourselves improve. So, how can we fully listen? Here are some suggestions to help you listen more effectively. Step 1. Attentive listening is acquired through applying the following 3 principles. First of all, if we want to listen attentively to others, we need to identify and eliminate the hindrances created by ourselves during the listening process so that we can patiently listen without judgment, and instead, listen with curiosity to really enjoy it like a child. The second rule is to be completely engaged in the conversation and refrain from leaving your phone in front of the other person during the conversation while listening carefully not only to the contents but also paying attention to the intonation, volume, eye contact, and gestures to better understand the information and message that the speaker wants to convey. The third principle is not to interrupt the speaker. This helps you show an open and respectful attitude towards the speaker. We just learned about the first step to listening attentively, but effective listening requires more than that. Imagine you are talking to a person who just sits still without showing any specific attitude or feeling. Then how do you feel? Surely your excitement of continuing the conversation will be more or less dampened, and you may feel confused about whether the other person wants to keep listening to you or not. So, we also need to follow the second step. Step 2. Open listening, or active listening. This is a technique to help you evoke positive emotions, win the sympathy of the speaker, and make them excited to share more. There are many ways to practice active listening. The first is nodding, which is the most basic and simplest signal to let the other person know that you are listening and agreeing with what they are sharing. In addition, you should think of using eye contact and body language during the conversation. The second is to use exclamations to express emotions while listening. Wow! Aha! That's fun! That's it! I got it! Etc. Such exclamations will let the other person know that you are interested in and fascinated by what that person is sharing. Thereby they will be more enthusiastic and excited to share with you more interesting information. The third is to use follow-up questions to encourage the other person to continue sharing their story. In some cases, when the speaker has difficulty presenting the next information, you should use suggestive questions to elicit and induce the next content, such as why, how, is it? Asking the right follow-up questions at the right time helps us to listen more fully and actively. In addition to being focused, attentive, and proactively eliciting information during the listening process, you should also make sure that the content you receive and understand is consistent with the information that the other person wants to convey to ensure the full listening process and effective communication. Which leads us to step 3, recreating. Before the communication ends, use the following 3 questions to confirm that you have understood what the other person wants to convey correctly and sufficiently. I heard that. Then repeat the contents you just heard from the other person. I understand that. You confirm your understanding to make sure you are correctly understanding the messages conveyed by the other person. I am going to do it like this. Is it okay? Using this sentence structure is highly recommended when communicating in a workplace setting to minimize risks and the waste of resources during the implementation of work assignments. Listening manifests as the gift of respect we give the other person and plays an important part in perfecting our communication skills. We hope that this video has helped you learn more about the skill of listening to get rid of hindrances so that you can listen more empathically, proactively, and fully. This Part 2 video also finalizes the concept of listening. Once again, thank you for your time. Goodbye, and see you in the next video.